So, Carlton, you had a couple questions about the WDE and the redo on that. So let's go through what you got some points off on. You got a half a point off for not having the right digits after the decimal. Units were in millimeters. So I double checked this. That was probably an error on this, but if you go to document properties, you go to units, and look at this, millimeter gram second was right, and you have 2 units after the decimal here, but for the length, you have 4 units after the decimal for the mass section properties. That should be 2, and that kind of threw me off, but I'll throw that back to you. So if we go to cancel and actually take a look at the mass properties and take a look at what else you got wrong with that, it said down here the resolution on that wasn't correct. It should be 3. So if you go over here to mass properties, I go to evaluate and look at the mass properties which are over here. What I was looking for over here is 3 units after the decimal. So using custom settings, make sure you have that to 3 rather than 2. And then that's supposed to be up at the highest, which it was, but I had to set that up to 3 rather than 2. So, you have to do that in order to get the right numbers. And you did get the right numbers in here too. So 417.555 and then 8194 down here. And if we take a look at the website, see what that was. And that should be in here too. So let's take a look at this. Let's swing this over. That should be correct. So 417.555 and then 8.194 on the y-axis in the positive direction. So you got that right. So I'll get that half a point back to you. And yeah, just make sure you have the precision in this correct and the accuracy on this too. So let's take a look at the other part you had in here, which was this guy. I mentioned that you had a lot of incorrect sketches, or implied that you did. So if you start up here at the wire hole boss, you have a lot of stuff in here that really doesn't need to be in here. You have a lot of these run-on dimensions, and you have this little gap in the bottom down that's just not right. You want to make sure that you do this correct. So let's go normal 2. You don't want this little itty-bitty little dimension in there. You probably worked really hard to get that in there, but the best thing to do is just take this out and pick up that coincident relationship. Get rid of this thing too. You don't need that in there. But what you really do need is you need to make sure that it's symmetrical. So right-click on this, select midpoint, selecting that guy, make that coincident, and that fixes that guy. So use your sketch geometry or your model geometry in order to define this a little bit better. Remember the symmetry. So same thing with these holes over here. I think I went across this, demonstrated this in class. Get rid of these dimensions, make that tangent relationship in here, or a perpendicular relationship from the center line from the center of that, and I think you should be in pretty good shape. The wire cut's something very similar. I think we went over this in class. So the 6 millimeter dimension here, make it 12, go over the center. So you're defining both squares to be 12 millimeters from each other. It's a little bit easier if it's symmetrical. You kind of design it to be symmetrical, and you label it as such too. So this thing, instead of 12.5, that should be 25. And then the top hole's something very similar. Instead of 230 millimeter dimensions, it's a lot better to put a 60 millimeter dimension between those two and say that the holes are centered. And that should clear that up. So that's why you got that whole error message or whole error notation on your WDE for the redo.